Today is World Holocaust Day, so it's a time to remember the millions who died during the Holocaust under Nazi persecution, as well as marking the genocides that followed in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in Bosnia and in Darfur.
Events are taking place right across the UK. And as our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody explains, the commemoration is more poignant and, of course, relevant than ever before.
Children in Dorchester, lighting candles and remembering. The theme for this year's event, the fragility of freedom. It's a fragile concept and one that's inspired Dorchester's young to draw, to make models and to write poetry. The Mayor of Dorchester says the contribution of the young is vital.
We must never forget. It's important to remember. It's important to reflect. So digest what you see, and it's only that way that we might be able to learn from the appalling genocides in the past.
World Holocaust Day remembers atrocities across the world. Not only the slaughter of 6 million Jews, Gypsies, disabled and gay people at the hands of the Nazis, but also the killing of 2 million in Cambodia under the communist regime of Pol Pot in the 1970s. Hundreds of thousands of deaths in Guatemala between 1960 and 1996. The genocide of up to 1 million Tutsi people in Rwanda in 1994. And the continued killing of the Darfuri people in Sudan. But in a week where acres of newsprint has been devoted to talk of a Third World War and even conscription, Dorchester's MP Chris Loder believes the message of World Holocaust Day has never been as relevant as it is today.
I think what, for me, as a Member of Parliament, was quite unsettling was actually to see some of the terms and references here on the screen behind me a little earlier that are actually still being used today in some protests that happen in London. And that is very uncomfortable and I think is food for thought.
Events continue throughout the weekend with the lighting of candles, the saying of prayers and the hope that by remembering and commemorating we can prevent the atrocities of the past from ever being repeated. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, we're joined now by Chairman of the National Jewish Assembly, Gary Mond. What do you think about when you think today?
Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, and it commemorates probably the biggest tragedy in the history of mankind, with more than 6 million Jews mass murdered in an industrial plan by Nazi Germany. And there's absolutely nothing that is comparable to it.
I was going to say, because obviously we've covered this all my career, every year, and it comes up, and I've talked to Holocaust survivors and all the rest of it, and what always comes up is that message, we must remember this, we must learn from this so that it doesn't happen again. Vitally important. And here we are in 2024, where anti-Semitism is on the rise, and I just find that absolutely extraordinary. People are openly being anti-Semitic.
Yes, it is horrendous. Number of points. Firstly, the education needs to be improved with regard to the Holocaust in schools. People need to understand what lay behind the Holocaust and what were the events that led up to the Holocaust in terms of the way Jews were persecuted in Nazi Germany and, of course, in the countries that Germany occupied during the war. And step by step, what led all the way to the gas chambers. There needs to be a better education there.
It's interesting you say that, because in some of the recent protest marches where people have actually been yelling anti-Semitic things, various journalists have gone up to those particular people and asked them about the Holocaust, and they didn't even know what it was.
Really?
Yes.
This is a savage indictment on our education system. Absolutely horrendous. And if they actually don't know what the Holocaust is, what hope is there for preventing similar events in the future? Heaven forbid.
They were shouting from the river to the sea, and one journalist went up to them and said, which river and what sea? And they didn't know. So they're just yelling hateful things just because they want to be hateful, I suppose. They don't even know the geography or the history.
And what is also behind is the horrendous levels of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism tends to morph over the generations as to how it features. Firstly, we have the far-right anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, which is on the decline compared to what it used to be. We also have far left-wing anti-Semitism, for which the Corbyn years will be most remembered. But thirdly, there is fundamentalist Islamic anti-Semitism, where religion is used to indoctrinate many, many young people into hating Jews and wanting to kill Jews. And that is absolutely horrendous.
Why is it that one thing I've never understood, if you take, you know, what we see in the UK and what we've seen in the UK for a long time, is a stereotype. This, you know, the stereotyping of Jewish people and the fact that some people I've met actually who just have this constant suspicion, and I struggle to understand how and why that even started, never mind how it can still exist today.
The way it started was the stereotyping is to generalise about Jews, to say that Jews all think the same way and all have a common agenda.
Which we know it doesn't apply to anybody.
The reality is there are Jews who are conservatives, Jews who are socialists,
exactly.
Jews who take all sorts of political views, have got all sorts of interests, and heaven knows, tremendous numbers of different opinions about every subject under the sun.
Yeah.
Maureen Lipman, Dame Maureen Lipman, has said she doesn't feel safe being a Jew. She said, there's nowhere in the UK where I feel safe anymore, which is a terrible thing. Would you agree with her?
Tragically, to a considerable extent, I do. We're seeing Jews being persecuted. I think persecuted is probably not too strong a word. In the professions, in schools, in hospitals, in many different areas of life. I think this began with the case of Danielle Grayman. I don't know if you remember her a year or two ago. She was the Leeds University student whose essays were marked down because she expressed pro-Israel sentiments. She took Leeds University to court and won. This was before the war began. And I think there may well be a number of similar situations happening in the coming year where some Jews will say, I have had enough, I need to get some legal reimbursement for what has happened to me.
I say it's just a shocking indictment. We should be in a situation where we're talking about, you know, remembering the horrors, but commenting how the world is a better place.
Yes.
And
it's like
it's
we're going
just going in reverse.
Yes, the world is not a better place,
no,
tragically.
It's not.
So what
Really
can we
isn't.
do about it? I mean, you said better education, but, you know, show me some there will be some teachers who
I think there needs to
teach
be
that.
stronger... Well, those teachers should be fired if they refuse to teach the Holocaust properly and according to what actually really happened during the Holocaust years. And the other thing that can be done better is a proper enforcement of the law against Jew haters. And by the way, I prefer the word Jew hater to anti-Semite because it is much more specific and much easier to comprehend.
Yes, yeah, that's a very valid point. I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, I wouldn't have felt comfortable saying that because I would wonder if it was the right thing to say.
Perfectly OK, perfectly acceptable. You can use the two words almost interchangeably, but I actually personally prefer Jew hater and Jew hatred to be quite emphatic about the matter.
But in that sense, though, what I'm intrigued by, would you then argue that it is... Because I'm very anti-hate, actually. I don't think it's a good, healthy thing for anyone to hate.
I agree completely.
But so you would apply that to all people of society, would you, that we shouldn't hate anybody?
Of course we shouldn't hate anybody. We should respect each other. We should respect each other's religions, each other's races, each other's interests in life, and try to understand them. Interfaith work has made efforts in this direction over the years, but sadly, it hasn't succeeded completely because of what we're seeing today, and particularly the relationships between the Jewish communities and the Muslim communities have suffered terribly.
Yeah.
And that's because there's not enough comprehension about what it is to be Jewish and how important Israel is to the fibre and to the basis of belief of the Jewish community in the UK.
Gary, it's a real pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.